Is it really 4%?
It's appalling to be hearing that in 2015.
This beautiful creative industry has almost the worst report card of all industries.
It's just not right how few female directors we have.
Out of the 60 or so films that I've made, I can count the women directors on one hand.
What is going on behind the camera? Who's making these decisions?
Stop saying that there's not enough qualified women. They're out there.
Women are more than half of the world.
We have a real way of seeing the world that is not necessarily separate from men, but we have a point of view.
Isn't it going to be a richer, better experience in the movies if we get to hear from other people?
Just for our culture's sake, not, let alone the individuals whose dreams I want to come true.
The next Kubrick, in no one's mind, is a woman. No one. No one believes the next Scorsese is a woman.
It's just like with black and white. We've been conditioned to believe it to be one way.
You don't want to be too defined by the stereotypes of what a director is.
You don't want to be considered a female filmmaker. You're just a filmmaker.
They keep saying, woman, like, you're some sort of strange animal.
Just give me the job. I am absolutely the only person that can. Why are you even questioning it?
It shouldn't be seen as such a crazy thing if a woman, is nominated for an Academy Award for directing.
This is structural. There's a bias here. It's sad. It's just ingrained in the system.
I think just the moment has come when everyone's looking around in our community saying, we need to lead.
It's not just about my career. It's about who is coming up next.
Nobody wants to go into a field that feels incredibly unwelcoming.
It's educating people about what the reality is rather than everyone just sweeping it under the carpet.
The conversation is at a bit of a fever pitch, and there is a real chance of change.
Instead of, having like a million panels about it, let's do something about it.
When people think director, they think male.
A white guy in his late 20s and early 30s who lives on the east side of Los Angeles.
A beard, a kind of a brooding expression.
Probably doesn't shave very often. Maybe he has some cool glasses.
The baseball cap and, blue jeans.
You think, John Ford with his eye patch, or you think Martin Scorsese.
Howard Hawks or John Huston. They walk around in bush jackets and they speak through a megaphone.
Action! Yelling and being like, it's my passion, that's why I'm yelling.
When I met Oliver Stone once, he said, wow, you directed The Peacemaker. And you're wearing red lipstick.
We've been conditioned to believe it to be one way. When you think about the beginning of Hollywood, how many white women directors did you see? When you talk about the beginning, it was a white male-ran business.
You have the Hollywood moguls, the bosses at the top, the Louis B. Mayers and the Zanucks and the Zukers and all of those, and the Warner Brothers.
Father gives job to son, who gives job to son, or has a cousin, or knows another guy.
There's definitely a boys' club, and they definitely run the show.
Well, he looks like me. He has the same baseball cap as I do.
They're all putting men into the positions of power, the key positions on any movie.
It's a bit like the Vatican. It's like the priesthood. They don't want women being priests. It's good, and women can be nuns.
I don't think anybody's actively trying to keep women out of it. It's a default setting in the brain.
There are habits, and people continue habits for a long time.
I think some things are unconscious bias. I think men have it against women, and I think women have it against women.
Our brains are used to seeing the stereotype. If we see a man walk into a situation in a policeman's uniform, we get that. That's normal, we get it. A man in authority.
Often when we work with somebody for the first time, they'll sort of look to Jonathan for the technical questions, and then
to me for the hair and makeup and the wardrobe.
Somebody will say to me, oh, okay, so this is going to be handheld. Can you do that? I feel when I step on set, I'm got to have my big boots, and I've got to feel like I have strength, power, and command.
There's a tendency to, you dress in more like, gender neutral, as they say it nowadays.
I find that's very true for a lot of women who work behind the camera, because I feel like they have to make themselves more like men and neuter themselves so that they're respected for their work.
I do actually, when I'm leading, kind of dress like a teenage boy.
I wear pants more than I might. There is something about, I feel like I kind of need to dress to feel I have to be comfortable, but I also want to feel strong.
I shot Andy Warhol, which we shot on the streets of New York. Whenever we would be on the streets and we'd be on a dolly or a crane, I would make a point of wearing a dress. Because I thought, you know what, I'm just going to promote this image as much as I could, that girls can be behind the camera, they can be cool, they can be smart, they can be savvy and quick. And so I really wanted to embody that.
It's about thinking about gender in a different way than we do. You have to be very aware, and as women, even, we have to be very aware of when we are making compromises.
It takes a lot of work to find that in ourselves and to identify what we really, really think at the root of our soul, how we make decisions, how we make choices.
It's the same way we used to think, what is a senator? It was almost like a senator meant a man, and we don't think that anymore. So it has to be, what is a director?
A good director, to me, is a great storyteller.
Do you understand the story? Do you love the story?
And need to tell it so badly that it's all you can think about.
You have to have trust.
Vision.
Imagination.
Shamelessness. An ability to communicate. Be open to suggestion.
Open to chance.
I like directors who are patient with me.
And willing to be discerning when something's not quite right.
A director has to convince. A director has to cajole.
And yeah, it helps if they're not, batshit crazy.
The thing you got to realize about the industry is it's all about money.
Hollywood's a business. Hollywood runs on money.
I have a theory that the lower the budget, the more women can work in the field. So if it's documentary, there's tons of women. And if it's an indie movie, there's quite a lot of women. And if there's mainstream movies, less. And if it's a big blockbuster, almost nobody.
You don't have to have 20/20 eyesight to see the big sign on the door that says, "You're not welcome. No girls allowed in the treehouse."
There certainly are very few large-budget motion pictures that are directed by women.
There are so many hilarious myths, and when we've done where people say, oh, a woman doesn't want to direct this kind of movie or that kind of movie, yet when you actually ask a woman, you do a study, you do a survey, that is not true.
We talked to 41 female directors. Over 40% said, I'd love to do a blockbuster. I'd love to do a comic book. I'd love to do a tentpole.
Of course I'd like to make a big budget film. Why wouldn't I?
Can women direct strong action films like Catherine Bigelow did with The Hurt Locker? If her name was not on that film, would you think it was directed by a man? Of course you would.
When I ask studio executives what's the main reason why you don't have more women directors, they tell me, well, there just aren't women who've directed movies at this budget level. So we can't get women through our greenlighting process.
There's a big issue there because they all just say it's too hard, it's too hard, it's too hard. Sorry, you're too hard, it's too hard. I make 300 outgoing calls for you, and this one I get 100 incoming.
I know how people are hired. There's a list, and you see the names, and you say, what have they done? Could they handle this?
Of course you're going to say, there's no woman that has a track record for these big action movies because you didn't hire any of us, guys.
You see so many male directors and male DPs, quite frankly, who shoot, a Sundance-winning
million film and somebody calls and says, look, I love what you did with Nobody. Like, here's $100 million. Let's go shoot a studio movie.
That risk is acceptable if it's male director and it is not if it's female director. There's like, you know, the famous example right now is the guy who did Safety Not Guaranteed and then, you know, the new Jurassic Park movie.
The director, Colin Trevorrow, had very little experience. He had directed an independent film prior to that. And this was a very large budget. And a lot of people thought, well, there are a lot of women directors who have directed many more things than just the one film that Trevorrow had directed. Why didn't any of them get a chance?
The guys have the money. The guys own it right now. And that's why the girls don't see that much of it, I think.
There's crazy things that are said about women. They're not good with money. You know, they don't know how to balance a budget.
I guess everyone's just getting the memo that women hold the purse strings of every fucking household ever. You know, it's just true.
I think the real hard truth that nobody ever wants to talk about is not are women capable of directing big movies, but the process of directing that movie means that you have to live with that film. You live with it for a very long time, and you are all in. So I think that people look at women and say, do they have a family? Do they have children they have to deal with?
After I had my fourth baby, I'd not worked for 4 years. I'd just taken time out after Nowhere Boy to just stop still and be at home and root myself. And when I first started trying to get back to work, I'd go in for meetings and people say, so what have you been doing since Nowhere Boy? And I'd say, well, I've had 4 kids and it's amazing. The littlest one is now da-da-da-da-da. And I could see the door closing as I was being shuffled out.
In terms of the people who are offering the jobs, I don't know that we have a lot of female agent partners. I don't know that we have a lot of female executives, you know, in the big studio world. And it seems like if that was a little bit more balanced, that this bias wouldn't exist.
We've got to get to the point where we're going to let women direct the rock star movies with the rock star character roles and the rock star actors, because I think that's also super empowering.
It shouldn't be gender specific, and it shouldn't be a question. It should just be, we're making a movie.
It's always been harder not only for women to gain entry into the ranks of directors, but also to sustain careers, to get the second and third chances.
You have this pattern that just repeats over and over again of the first or second film never being followed up with anything else, even if it was liked.
I've seen guys where they haven't done anything, or they've had 2 flops, and then they go back and they get $50 million to make their next movie. So I myself have questioned, what is that about?
The most significant studies of women in filmmaking is that men as filmmakers get so many more opportunities to make films than women.
The gap that exists between movies for men and for women is really different. It's about 1 to 3 years for men, male directors, and it's about 3 to 7 years for women.
Wait a minute, if I'm one of the highest grossing women directors, how come I'm still having to really fight to get through the door for this movie or that movie? And why am I not getting these scripts?
The eyes on us are often much more judgmental, and the eyes on us are often much more unforgiving, you know, and the so-called mistakes that are absolved in several male directors, or, you know, that was a bad movie for him, he'll be up to better, are not the same standards that are handed out to women.
Women can fail once. If they fail, it's the woman who failed, because there's so few women.
If a woman makes a mistake, people remember it. If a man makes a mistake, more often than not, people forget it.
If a female director doesn't succeed, she's gonna go to directing jail. Guys get out of directing jail a lot faster than women.
When I directed Pay It Forward, it was a financial bomb at the box office, and I went to movie jail. And it was a very painful, experience. And it took like 8 or 9 years before I directed another feature.
You just can't wait 8 years. You have bills to pay, you have kids to feed. Who could wait 8 years?
The chances of you're being able to economically support yourself and whoever else you're supporting over that length of period, enough to call it your main source of income or your career, is highly challenged right now.
We're seeing women face a fiscal cliff where they drop off in significant numbers as they try to navigate a financially lucrative career.
All these young girls that I mentor, they're coming to me and telling me that their parents are saying you cannot be a director and you can't be a DP, and maybe you could be a writer, but barely. Because the statistics are so bad, the parents are using that against them, saying pick another job in school. I'm not paying for this.
I didn't realize how possible it was for having a female director. And I think I sat there and I watched Boys Don't Cry by Kimberly Pierce. I watched Love and Basketball by Jenna Prince Bythewood. And I was on my way to law school. It never occurred to me that, hey, a woman can be a director. And as soon as those credits came up, I was like, it is possible.
Seeing what Lena Dunham has done as a star, writer, director, producer has made an enormous amount of young women think, oh, that's possible.
The people in power have to give women a chance to succeed. And it's that simple. They have to give them many opportunities to have success.
There's a lot of democracy in the way a first movie can get made, and talent can bubble up. It's about taking a chance on that talent and, allowing it to fly.
The mass-produced entertainment that the entire world enjoys is being created exclusively or almost exclusively from a male perspective.
The parts for women, maybe because there aren't enough women writing either, could be more layered, more interesting.
Women don't have to just be like the nagging wife when the guy's being funny or like the crazy neighbor.
You're either on the phone or waving goodbye at the doorstep to your husband or boyfriend or brother or father who's going off to begin the plot of the movie.
Women are expected to talk about relationships, because it's our only pole of interest. That's all we know about. Men and love.
We are the princess to be rescued. We are the witch to contend with. We are the mother to abandon, but we are never the hero.
The target audience for so long, ever since Star Wars, has been 15-year-old boys. They generally don't like being told what to do by their mother. They're, either they're trying to, sleep with girls, or they're like, ooh, I don't want to hang out with you, I'm gonna hang with my friends. And so there's this 15-year-old little boys kind of view of women, and that has crept in to our movies.
You notice that women are less likely to be wearing pants, for instance, which is always a mystery to me. Like, why doesn't she get to wear pants? Or they're wearing high heels in really impractical situations where every woman watching is like, I know you would take this off right now. I know you have flats under your desk. I have flats under my desk.
If women were telling the story, not just a woman's story, but many stories, you would get a slightly different view.
My new film, Queen of Katwe, one of the executives was describing this film. And he says, do you know what I say in dinner parties when I talk about this film? He says, I say, this is a story about a man who comes into a slum with a chessboard and begins to train children. And in one of those groups of children, he finds a girl who is a genius. And that is also true. But my version is, this is a story about a girl who sells corn for a living and then is taught how to play chess and becomes a prodigy. It's just a different way in.
The way women think and the way men think and the way everybody thinks is extremely different, and that different outcomes may come from different experiences based on fill in the blank. I mean, sexual preference, gender.
It's different because of the way where you came from. Where did you grow up? What kind of stories were you told as a child?
If you have more women-centric movies, like that were written by a woman, directed by a woman, starring cool female characters that are actually dimensional and doing something interesting, then you get these diverse stories. You get inspiration.
They used to say, when I first started, girls will see boys' movies, but boys won't see girls' movies.
The evidence is mounting where those myths and beliefs, they can't be held anymore.
50% of the people buying the tickets at the theaters are women. This isn't, as many people have pointed out, this is not a niche. This is half of the population.
All of a sudden, everyone realizes that female content and female-driven content is actually making money.
Frozen, $1.2 billion.
Twilight, one of the biggest franchises of the last 15 years.
Melissa McCarthy, is what Will Ferrell was 10 years ago.
Hunger Games, passed on by every major studio because female-driven action films don't work. Work pretty well.
But despite the fact that there are movies that are made for women that are wildly commercially successful, they're still sort of seen as the exception.
People are doing this to make money. It's a business. So why are they not looking for a business opportunity? I think it's a cultural blind spot.
We're missing out on a whole part of humanity when there's such a dominant narrative being told by one group of people.
Think about what that does to, to kids, male and female, in terms of how they view the world and how they view women and how they view men.
It's far more than an employment issue. This is about the image we see of ourselves as a culture out there, and the image young people see of what stories are worth telling and what perspectives are worth hearing.
This art form has such an impact, and so it's delicious when they are showing an inclusiveness and a diversity of thought and race and gender and, and more complexity as our world is.
In this country, we have the ability to speak and stand up for ourselves. We have that right, and a lot of times we don't use it.
Women have to overcome being afraid to talk about a lot of things that haven't been all that popular in the workplace or in male company, for that matter.
I would often ask women about how gender bias affected them in their jobs as directors, producers, actresses, and you'd get this look back like, please don't make me talk about that.
Oftentimes, we're afraid to speak up because if we speak up, well, what if they take away the opportunity? What if they don't call me back? Because I could seem like now I'm trouble. Oh, she's asking to be treated fairly? You're asking for us to diversify this? Oh, she's difficult.
When men are tough, and they are to be admired. When women are tough, everybody says, oh, what a bitch.
Men don't bitch. Men have objections.
Men are socialized to declare themselves very quickly and forcefully early on.
Women have been trained to be well-behaved, to be polite and courteous, not to be angry.
I have a natural tendency to say, oh, I'm sorry, or to apologize, or to say everything wrong with my project first.
Women tend to, when negotiating for a job, ask for less than their male peer would ask in the same negotiation.
I oftentimes have to say to myself, oh, shut up about this issue already in my workplace. Like, you can't every single minute say, but why isn't there a woman on the list? Well, couldn't we find a female editor? But of course I can say that. Why shouldn't I be saying that? But everyone rolls their eyes at me like, enough already. But it's not enough already.
That goes to the heart of, women supporting other women, which is the thing that has to happen if anything is going to change.
But it is tricky. It is very tricky because women that move into the higher positions of producing power have a lot at stake. And in the old days, they had to prove they were part of the boys' club, that they could play like a boy, they could dress like a boy, act like a boy, and hire boys.
It is almost harder for a woman to say, hey, yeah, no, I got you. Come on up. I'll help you get up here. There's more of a sensibility or the instinct to be like, I have to fucking do this on my own. You better get yourself up here too, you know? And then when we're up here, then we'll have coffee.
If we're ever going to change anything in this industry as women, we've got to bond together. We're never going to have that crab in the bucket mentality. I'm never going to take another woman down.
And men have to lean in and they have to work with us and they have to change this and they have to share the wealth and share the jobs.
It's really up to the behind-the-camera cinematic family to be conscious of it and offer up those opportunities.
You have to try to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Imagine how the entire industry would shift in 365 days if every single studio exec had to pull in 3 names of women, people of color. And then the same with agents and managers who have completely walked away without any accountability in this.
When you're an agent and you're sending a list out, here are 20 writers that we think might be perfect for this project. Don't just have the token 1 female or 2 females. Have 50-50.
Let's get to 50-50. Nobody needs more, nobody needs less. Sometimes it'll lean one way, sometimes it'll lean the other. But what doesn't make sense is for an industry to stand still while we have statistics like 96.4.
People may not have it on their radar that this is an important issue. This is an issue of diversity.
The moment we begin to have, as we're doing right now, open and honest dialogue is the moment it changes.
So many people in Hollywood meditate. It has to become part of their meditation. Like today, I will hire a female director.
You may think that's the most important thing to you. You may not think it's the most important thing to you. Just take the action.
Anytime there's been change in history, in our society, in this country, it's been because a few people have just said, to hell with it, and they just bust through the door.